So let's break down why this photo and many others like it are not really that flattering to the subject. Getting a photograph like this is actually really difficult. The photographers will often wait for hours on end to get that one single frame. And unfortunately, often these pictures are taken in cars, behind tinted windows, and it's often really dark. And so what does that mean the photographers will often use in dark situations?
This is the story of a man who once lived among Britain's most powerful royals. And now, through a shocking new memoir from Princess Diana's former butler, the curtain is being ripped wide open on years of secret drama and jaw-dropping behavior no one expected. Behind those polished palace gates, the royal life wasn't always as perfect as it looked. Even Queen Elizabeth II, known for her calm and steady hand, reportedly found it tough to keep certain situations under control. Paul Burrell.
It turned very sexual, and it was abuse straight away from both of them.
The man at the heart of this new tell-all spent over 20 years deep inside the royal household, and what he saw clearly left a mark that never faded. He started out humbly as a footman serving the Queen herself before working his way up to become the butler for King Charles III, back when he was still the Prince of Wales. That role placed him right in the middle of royal power plays, fancy dinners, and private family moments that most people could only dream of witnessing. But Burrell's fame truly exploded when he became Princess Diana's personal butler and most trusted confidant in 1987, a bond that lasted until her heartbreaking death in Paris a decade later. That connection to Diana is exactly why his words still grab the world's attention today. His earlier book, A Royal Duty, sold over 2 million copies worldwide. Proof that the public just can't get enough of what really went down behind those palace walls. Now at 67, Paul Burrell is back with another explosive tell-all, The Royal Insider, My Life with the Queen, the King, and Princess Diana.
They need to use their flash units. That's because they need to expose the subject correctly. And without having any flash, it would essentially just be a dark car. Traditionally, flash units, like this, are called speedlights, and they're attached to the top of a camera. And what they do is they emit a huge burst of light in a quick second to freeze the motion of what they're looking at.
Released in January 2026 by Hachette Mobius, this book isn't just another royal memoir. It's packed with heavy claims and shocking moments that are already stirring serious conversation. This time, Burrell shines a harsh spotlight on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, making allegations that are hard for readers to brush off. According to Burrell, what he saw wasn't a one-time slip-up. It was a repeated pattern of arrogance and disrespect that left a lasting impression. He didn't sugarcoat anything, saying, "I had lots of interactions with Andrew over the years. I saw his pomposity firsthand." Burrell even claimed that Andrew would shout things like "F off, get out of here, F off" toward people, a level of rudeness that shocked even those used to royal tempers. He recalled times when the palace staff had enough and pushed back, furious after being kept up working late into the night. While Burrell makes clear that these are his personal experiences, the stories have reignited public debate. Those small mentions of late nights might sound harmless on the surface, but Burrell insists they point to something much deeper and more troubling within royal life. Burrell claims that Prince Andrew often hosted lavish dinner gatherings that dragged on until midnight, leaving palace staff exhausted and frustrated.
a.m. in the morning, 8 a.m. in the morning, the police unmarked police cars, unmarked officers. They arrested the former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He was staying in Norfolk, so he has been kicked out of the Royal Lodge, which is his home on the estate of Windsor Castle. He has moved to a smaller house up in Norfolk while his big house was being renovated. It's his 66th birthday.
Things reportedly got so tense that Queen Elizabeth II herself had to step in and address the situation personally. But here's the shocking part. Even a direct reprimand from the monarch supposedly didn't fix the problem. According to Burrell, that defiance revealed a lot about the complicated power struggles and family dynamics hiding behind the royal walls. He went even further, alleging that after the Queen scolded him, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson reacted by refusing to let staff enter their rooms, choosing instead to stay in bed for hours, and in his words, abusing the system entirely. Burrell paints a picture of behavior that wasn't just rebellious, but almost like a protest against palace rules. And he doesn't stop there. Burrell suggests that these weren't sudden habits, they were years in the making. He traces it all back to what he calls one major influence, setting the stage for even more scandal. According to him, Andrew was raised differently from his siblings, protected, spoiled, and rarely ever challenged. He even hints that maybe our dear late queen was to blame for that, claiming she never said no to her favorite son. Burrell believes timing had everything to do with it. By the time Andrew was born, the queen had finally settled into her role and had more freedom to focus on being a mother, possibly giving him more attention than anyone else. Burrell says the queen gave Andrew a level of affection she hadn't been able to show Charles or Anne, and that extra attention made all the difference. He explains that Prince Philip acted as the royal gatekeeper, making sure family members followed strict protocol before they ever approached the queen. But according to Burrell, Andrew often ignored those boundaries completely, doing things his own way and creating a unique, and sometimes tense, family dynamic that definitely didn't go unnoticed. What makes Burrell's version of events even more striking is his claim that this air of privilege didn't stop with Andrew. It spread to Sarah Ferguson too.
In this particular situation, they've used really bright flash to make sure that Mountbatten is exposed correctly. So a consequence of using high-powered speedlights or flash units is that you get these little red eye reflections in the subject. The other thing that happens is a pretty blue colour balance. You find that images like this can often look quite cold unless you ramp up the warm colour temperature in post-production.
At 66 now, Fergie, as the public knows her, came from a much more grounded life. Burrell describes her as a farmer's daughter and the offspring of a polo manager. Yet once she stepped into royal life, everything changed fast. Burrell recalls Andrew telling her, "You can have anything you want," a promise that, in his view, fueled their extravagant lifestyle. She had it all, Burrell said, adding that because every wish was granted, Sarah quickly became used to luxury and constant comfort. He describes the couple as two peas in a pod, both enjoying privilege and expecting special treatment wherever they went. But that royal dream eventually collapsed. Sarah has since moved out of Royal Lodge, and both her Duchess of York title and Andrew's own honors were stripped away. The downfall hit its peak on October 30th, 2025, when King Charles III officially removed Andrew's remaining titles after years of intense public scandal. It was a move long in the making, especially after Andrew's disastrous 2019 BBC interview that forced him to retreat from royal duties once and for all. Commentators describe that infamous interview as a total disaster, a moment that wrecked Prince Andrew's public image beyond repair. The man once introduced with full royal titles, His Royal Highness Prince Andrew, Duke of York, is now known simply as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. That change alone says everything about how far his royal standing has fallen. Even the palace has gone completely silent, refusing to speak on his behalf anymore. A major sign of how much the situation has shifted. For years, Andrew has faced non-stop legal battles and public scrutiny tied to his past, keeping his name in the headlines whether he wanted it or not. But Burrell points out that the fallout didn't just strip him of titles. It also shook the royal family from the inside. Reports claim that the once tight relationships between Andrew and other senior royals have grown distant, with whispers of broken trust echoing behind those palace doors. When someone who used to be front and center suddenly vanishes from royal duties, of course people start asking, what really happened? And as time went on, money became a growing part of the conversation too. After losing his official royal role, Andrew no longer had access to the same support systems that once funded his luxury lifestyle. Rumors spread fast about how he planned to keep up his grand way of living, especially as reports surfaced about complicated property deals and financial arrangements that only fueled more speculation. Even without official royal duties, the costs of royal living never truly went away. Security bills, property upkeep, and the lavish standards expected of a prince didn't just vanish overnight, creating a messy, expensive reality for Andrew to juggle. Meanwhile, the public's opinion of him changed fast, and Burrell notes that rebuilding a reputation is always harder than losing one. Once the headlines turn sour, they stick, and every news story gets judged through that same harsh spotlight. Commentators have pointed out that the palace's silence speaks louder than words. Traditionally, the royal family steps in to manage scandals or steer public opinion when one of their own is in trouble. But in Andrew's case, that support seemed to vanish completely. a clear signal that the palace was keeping its distance and drawing a firm line between him and the firm. Burrell's bigger takeaway is that this didn't happen overnight. It was decades in the making.
And they said they just don't trust anybody. Andrew is potentially a flight risk. He has made some indications that he would like to move full-time to the Middle East. Just last week, his daughter was in the Middle East with his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. And so they didn't want anybody to know here. So they did not tell the king. They kept it very, very private within the police force. They didn't want him to be tipped off.
He paints a picture of how personality, privilege, and the royal environment mixed together to build a ticking time bomb that eventually exploded into full-blown scandal. Whether you agree with Burrell's take or not, his insider view adds depth to a story that's still unfolding. With consequences echoing through the royal family even now, what hits hardest is how quickly royal status can crumble when public trust disappears. For years, Andrew walked with the unshakable confidence that came from royal privilege. But once controversy took center stage, that shield cracked wide open. His fall from senior royal to private citizen wasn't just a title change. It was a complete shift in power, image, and identity. Andrew's fall from grace didn't just change his title. It changed his entire day-to-day life. Reports began surfacing about major tension over his living situation at Royal Lodge, the sprawling estate tied to his former royal position. Suddenly, the question of who would cover the endless maintenance bills, round-the-clock security, and long-term costs became a public debate. It showed just how messy things can get when someone loses royal status but still tries to live like nothing's changed. Money, family, and reputation. When all three collide, there's no easy fix. Burrell points out that even within the royal institution, protecting the crown's image had to come first. That meant distance had to be created, even if it meant cutting off one of their own. Experts noted that the modern monarchy runs on public approval, and one scandal can stain everyone tied to the royal brand. So, behind closed doors, the pressure to contain damage must have been immense, even if the real decisions were never revealed to the public. Burrell's account paints Andrew as someone molded by privilege since childhood, surrounded by people who rarely told him no. That lack of boundaries, he suggests, followed him into adulthood and only came crashing down when the world finally pushed back.
A haggard Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was driven away following his arrest that shocked the world. After being held for 11 hours on suspicion of misconduct in a public office, the stunned-looking former prince was released under investigation. His arrest on the King's Sandringham estate triggered arguably the biggest crisis in the monarchy.
Whether readers see Burrell's words as inside knowledge or just his own viewpoint, his story captures how power, loyalty, and personal choices can collide and create consequences that last for decades. And just when things couldn't get more intense, the situation took a darker twist. The Metropolitan Police confirmed they were reviewing new information after an email reportedly surfaced, one that allegedly showed Andrew asking his police bodyguard back in 2011 to dig up personal details about his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, including her social security number and date of birth. That revelation reignited global attention, proving the world's obsession with what really happened behind those palace walls isn't fading anytime soon. Whether anyone actually followed through on that alleged request remains unconfirmed, but the existence of the email alone was enough to set off a storm of fresh questions. The public and press jumped right back on the story, reigniting interest in a case that refuses to fade away. Then came another bombshell. According to emails reviewed by the BBC, Andrew may have shared sensitive material from a 2010 trade trip to Southeast Asia. Those files were reportedly discovered among millions of documents released by the U.S. Department of Justice, adding yet another layer of international scrutiny to a man already under a heavy spotlight. Through it all, Andrew has continued to deny every allegation made by Virginia Giuffre, standing firm on his innocence even as legal battles and public pressure dragged on for years. When asked about Burrell's explosive new book, the palace offered only a short, icy response. "We don't comment on such books." That single line spoke volumes, showing just how determined the institution is to keep its distance while still sending a clear message. This is his problem now. Meanwhile, on the ground, everyday life around Andrew reportedly changed too. According to The Sun, palace staff started quietly stepping back, with some even refusing to work for him at all. One insider said they were told they didn't have to stay if they felt uneasy, and apparently plenty of people took that option. There's already quite a list saying no thanks, one source revealed, adding that within the household there was a deep sense of discomfort and unease. Andrew, once treated like untouchable royalty, is now described by many as a total pariah, a man shut out from the world that once revolved around him. Those reports about staff refusing to work for Andrew might not reflect official palace policy, but they sure added to the growing public story about life inside his household. For the people who actually worked around him, the long-serving staff, the late-night employees, the ones who saw those tense moments up close, the atmosphere seems to have changed completely over time.
10 years, he had this really privileged position. He had no qualifications for it. He just happened to be Queen Elizabeth's son. And he had nothing to do. He had no job, very, very few formal qualifications.
The respect and loyalty that once came automatically started to fade, replaced by caution and distance. In his memoir, Paul Burrell paints this as something that had been brewing quietly for years, whispered within palace corridors, but never spoken out loud. He describes Andrew as a man molded by privilege and shielded from accountability by the royal family itself. For so long, no one ever pushed back hard enough to make him change, until the world outside the palace finally did. Now the picture looks totally different. The royal titles are gone, the official royal protection is gone, and the Queen, his greatest defender, is no longer here to shield him from the consequences. What's left, according to insiders and reports, is a man growing more and more isolated, not just from the institution he was born into, but even from some of the people who once served him loyally. What makes all this even more dramatic is how fast power can vanish when the system that supports it collapses. For decades, Andrew moved through life wrapped in layers of royal privilege, surrounded by wealth, ceremony, and control. But once that foundation cracked, everything he relied on, respect, authority, and reputation, began to crumble right beneath his feet. The truth behind the royal image looked completely different, and the contrast was impossible to ignore. Inside royal circles, reputation is everything, and it often depends more on perception than actual rank. Once the public loses confidence, the fallout spreads fast. Friendships cool off, doors quietly close, and even everyday conversations change. Suddenly, the person everyone once admired becomes the one people avoid mentioning. Those who once stayed quiet are now starting to talk, while others are stepping far away, refusing to be associated with any part of the controversy. Burrell's account pushes a deeper question to the surface. How much of this downfall was Andrew's own doing, and how much came from the world that shaped him? He argues that growing up wrapped in privilege can twist a person's sense of normal. What feels routine inside that bubble can look outrageous to everyone outside it. That kind of disconnect between personal reality and public expectation is exactly where many powerful figures begin to fall. And in Andrew's case, that fall has been massive. Here's a man who once carried layers of titles, medals, and royal honors, now living in near silence, stripped of the support and prestige that defined his entire existence. The transformation is nothing short of dramatic, especially happening under global scrutiny. It's the kind of story that fascinates people because it exposes what happens when power fades, privilege cracks, and the world finally stops looking away. A royal life turned upside down for everyone to see. The biggest question now isn't about what already happened. It's about what comes next. Is there any real path left for Prince Andrew to rebuild trust or repair a reputation that's been shattered so completely? At this point, the story has grown far beyond one man.
For nearly 400 years. The King insisted his brother should be subject to the full force of British justice, saying the law must take its course. Following days of planning, officers from Thames Valley Police swept along the Sandringham roads in 6 unmarked police vehicles at 8 a.m. yesterday. In the tightly coordinated operation, one car advanced on Wood Farm, Prince Philip's retirement home, which is being used as a temporary bolt hole by Andrew.
It's become a mirror reflecting how power, loyalty, and accountability crash into each other inside institutions built on image and tradition. Burrell points out that when someone grows up wrapped in non-stop privilege and protection, it's easy for confidence to blur into entitlement. Inside the royal bubble, that kind of behavior can seem normal until the outside world sees it for what it really is. Once the public spotlight hits, the cracks that were hidden for years suddenly look enormous, and what once seemed like routine royal life starts to look outrageous. But behind all the royal headlines lies an emotional truth that's easy to forget. Even the most powerful families are still just that, families. They're filled with parents, children, siblings, and complicated emotions that don't magically disappear because crowns or titles are involved. Loyalty can make loved ones defend each other long past the point of reason, and protective instincts can delay tough choices that should have been made long ago. And when the consequences finally land, they hit hard. What feels like a sudden collapse to the public has usually been building quietly behind closed doors for years. Burrell's view adds depth to this ongoing story, showing how the world someone grows up in can shape everything, from their choices to their downfall, and how even the most powerful name in the world can't escape the weight of reality forever. Burrell suggests that systems built to protect royal status can actually stunt personal growth when rules and boundaries aren't enforced early on. If someone spends decades being shielded from criticism, reality hits hard when accountability finally shows up, especially under the glare of worldwide media. That kind of pressure can twist how a person reacts, behaves, and even sees themselves once the safety net starts to vanish. Another powerful theme Burrell explores is identity. For most of his life, Andrew's entire sense of self was wrapped around royal titles, ceremonies, and the endless privilege that came with them. Once those pillars were stripped away, it didn't just shift how the public saw him, it completely shook how he understood himself. Losing that kind of institutional status on such a global stage is rare, and learning to live without it can be both emotionally and practically brutal. The challenge goes beyond royal walls. It's about how society has changed too. Public expectations are no longer what they once were. In today's world, people demand honesty, transparency, and accountability from those in power, especially anyone tied to historic institutions like the monarchy. Comebacks aren't as simple anymore because the world isn't as forgiving. And for someone who once lived above it all, facing that reality can be the hardest lesson of all. Now, Andrew's life has settled into a strange kind of silence. Not quite exile, but a long, uneasy pause. The once constant buzz of royal engagements, flashing cameras, and formal dinners has been replaced with quieter routines and limited appearances. For a man who spent decades living at the center of power, this isolation must feel like another world entirely.
Via its main driveway, while the others circle towards the back, blocking the rear entrance of the 5-bedroom property. While Andrew was being taken into custody at the unassuming Aylsham police station about an hour away, a raid was being launched 130 miles west at Royal Lodge, his former home on the grounds of Windsor Great Park.
Reports suggest his days at Royal Lodge have grown repetitive, with fewer visitors and a much smaller inner circle than before. Burrell hints that those closest to Andrew still try to shield him, but even they can't protect him from the weight of public opinion. The media lens may have softened slightly, yet curiosity remains. People still want to know what life looks like now for the prince who fell so far. Behind the gates, there are whispers of frustration and reflection. Some sources claim Andrew struggles with the idea that redemption may never come, while others say he still believes time will eventually dull the criticism. But as Burrell points out, in today's world, public memory is long, and the internet never forgets. Every headline, every quote, every rumor remains just a click away. His story has become a cautionary tale about what happens when privilege meets consequence. Once surrounded by ceremony and security, Andrew now faces the quiet echo of choices that can't be undone. The palace remains tight-lipped, offering no sign of reconciliation or return to duty. Whether that's final or temporary, no one really knows. But one thing is clear. The era of royal immunity is over, and the man who once lived untouchable must now live with the full weight of reality. Silence can be powerful, but it can also be lonely. When institutions step back to protect themselves, the individuals at the center are often left to face the storm alone. That distance between royal duty and personal reality creates a striking picture, one where privilege once ruled, but isolation now reigns. And when trust is broken so publicly, rebuilding it isn't just hard, it's nearly impossible. Every new headline, interview, or tell-all memoir adds another layer to this never-ending saga. Each revelation reshapes how the world sees not only Andrew, but the monarchy itself. Whether history looks back on this story with sympathy, anger, or a mix of both, one truth stands unshaken. Reputations, relationships, and royal legacies have been forever changed. What began as whispers behind palace walls has become a global cautionary tale about power, protection, and the price of silence. And still, one haunting question remains. Can true redemption ever exist after a fall this public, this messy, and this unforgettable? Or is the damage simply too deep to undo? Time will tell, but the world is definitely still watching. If this breakdown opened your eyes or made you see the royal story in a new light, don't just scroll away. Smash that like button, subscribe for more raw deep dives like this, share it with someone who needs the tea. And most importantly, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it, because this royal drama is far from over.